And the fourth one I add to you, free of charge, God grant me perspective to know when I actually have enough. Not just give me enough, but help me recognize that moment. 1 Timothy 6, verses 6 through 8 says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that." If you go back to verse 3 of 1 Timothy 6, you can see that godliness in this case is sound instruction in Jesus Christ. That's what he's talking about. Ultimate satisfaction, ultimate contentment truly comes through Jesus Christ above everything else that this world has to offer. And our response to contentment, to finding that point where we have enough and we know it, is that we should be thankful for God's generosity, and we should be generous because God has been generous with us and we are thankful. So I encourage you to pray these prayers this week. And just so you know, they'll scroll on the screen afterwards if you're writing them down and you didn't get them all written down. Don't fear these prayers. Pray them boldly, because contentment can be very elusive in our society. And we're different than a lot of other societies. So you can ask yourself, am I willing to be content even now? Even if you have future ambitions of something more in life, am I willing to be content with what I have now, especially in Jesus Christ, and especially with what God has given me? We can ask that more broadly as a church. Are we willing to be content with what we have? Of course, God may bless us in different ways, but are we willing to be content and say, we have enough to preach the gospel, we have enough to make disciples, and we want to make more? If you look at that, we'll go back to one other example. If you look to Exodus 16 that we read this morning, Israelites, they've been rescued. The Exodus has occurred. They've crossed the Red Sea. They've had a few issues, and now they're getting manna in the desert. They were still in the desert, right? They were called to be content. They still knew the promised land was coming, but they were in the desert. You see, contentment can be found in various stages of life. It's not a matter of just having everything in life or having even where God has called us to in life. We can find contentment in any stage. Paul said that in Philippians this morning. Exodus 16, we can see that they should have been content with what God had given them. We need to recognize that point. When you're content, you have enough and you know it. And that can happen in any stage in life. But God grant us that we would understand when that point is. Let's pray.